Welcome, everybody. We had different plans for this meeting. We had a person who was going to present, but there was a last-minute snafu, and with that last-minute snafu, unfortunately, he was not available to present. So we may work with him in the future, and he may present at a later date. But today we're just going to do a roundtable talking about all the concerns and game plans of everybody, and a bit of a market update, and kind of go from there. Hopefully that works for everybody. Kim, I see you made it. You're muted right now.
I did.
Yay, good for you. You got out of that other meeting, huh?
It ended early.
There you go. That's a good problem to have. So right now we've got, I don't know, 8 or 9 of us. I think there may be some others that join, but we'll just kind of get started. Typically what I do is I go and introduce my staff, and then I'll go from there and call names and have each person introduce themselves and tell what kind of functions and things that they do within the industry, or what they're looking to do in terms of flipping or a burr model, or what their investment strategy is. And then from there, we'll talk about the things that are going to be important to the group and the various projects that we have at hand. So kicking off with myself, I'm a mortgage lender. I lend money on fix and flips and hard money. I also lend on conventional purchases, government loans, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac loans, commercial loans. I cover a lot of ground. So pretty much just about anything that somebody might need lending for, I'm a person that can assist in that area. My assistant, Terrell, I call him my doc dog. He pretty much does the bulk of the loan after I get the things set up, or he'll jump in and do a setup for me if I'm a little bit tied up. And he chases down all the individual docs, the 10 million docs that we need for loans these days. Terrell, do you want to introduce yourself?
You did a pretty good job, but yeah, just hunt down docs, and currently trying to get all my education and stuff so I can end up getting my license eventually.
Yes, he's very close. He's just wrapped up his education, and I'm super excited to bring him on as a loan officer here very soon. And eventually, when he is more on the full-time on the loan officer side of things, we will replace his position with another person and go from there. So I'm excited for where he's headed. So then my daughter, Caitlin, who is she's my rudder. She steers the ship. She kicks my butt when I need it, and she is the creator and the master of everything. So you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Caitlin. I've talked to most of you. I run all the social media. I run all of our lead management and marketing. And let me find all my other hats that I wear to list for you. I keep everything organized and build the systems to do so, which is my latest project. I think that's about it. I'm just kind of the glue to the function here.
Well said. Yeah, definitely. And the other founder of South Sound Real Estate Networking is Rick VML. Do you want to introduce yourself, Rick?
Hello, everybody. So I'm Rick VML. I am a real estate investor where I'm focusing on the BRRRR strategy. For those that don't know what BRRRR is, it's buy, rehab, rent, refi, and then repeat. So I'm still new, but I have completed all but the refi. It's still sitting in Kevin's queue for the final one. Next meeting, I will say I have it all done.
You will.
So And I've already started the repeat portion of it already. We have a second property that we bought. We've been looking primarily at investing in the Grays Harbor area because it's a really good market for cash flow, at least right now. And geez, lo and behold, because of COVID, it also happens to be good for appreciation as well, because Grace Harbor is looking at about a 20% annual increase between, for this year and expecting close to that for next year. So
Yeah, Gracie Harbor's gotten a lot of attention because the Seattle markets and there's just all the investors, they just can't find the kinds of deals that they can find. If they go down to Grace Harbor, they can still get fairly inexpensive houses that'll cash flow very well. And so you're getting a lot of upward push from the investors from other areas going into that market. And so that's going to do nothing but drive that market up. So you're in a good position to have an appreciation play besides a cash flow play as time goes.
yes, most definitely. And December, I believe it is, I'm actually going to go over the numbers with the group on how we did. But I can tell you this much. I just looked at my numbers. That's what I was doing when we were getting ready. And I'm only going to leave $5,000 in the deal.
Yeah, not much.
Yeah.
Not much.
I'm leaving very little of my own money in the deal, and I'm cash flowing after all expenses, almost $200 a month, over and above what I'm paying myself for property management, over and above capital expenditures, operational expenditures, everything. That's even after debt service.
So it sounds like you're going to be in the neighborhood of about a 25% cash on cash.
Yeah, maybe a little closer to 30.
Okay. Where else can you get 25 to 30% cash on cash? Even the stock market is questionable as to whether or not it could do that. So that's a good cash play, good appreciation play. Gene, I see you're on with us. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Jean Falb. I own Total Tax and Accounting, and I'm a certified tax coach. Might be something you've never heard of before, but create advanced tax strategies, tax reduction strategies for business owners, and I lump real estate investors in there because that's what you guys do. And I wanted to mention, your name's not on there, and I'm really, it is Rick. You're kind of on the right track there. You probably know Grays Harbor has a lot of opportunity zone opportunities. So if you've got a capital gain you're trying to mitigate, that's a really great strategy to do that if that works for you.
Yeah, I think that what I'm looking at is if we do sell any of those properties within the next couple of years, we'll more than likely 1031 exchange them.
Yeah, it's just another option out there. So, but I'm sure you know what direction you want to go. Go ahead. You look like you have a question, Kevin.
Gene, so you brought up the opportunity zones. Is that certain geographic areas down there, or does that cover like the whole city?
No, it's if you Google opportunity zone in Grays Harbor, it's specific areas in the county, but it's delineated, and it has to be. You have to invest in business or income generating. It's not meant to shelter a gain on your primary residence, for example. So.
Okay.
But you could do that for a flip, right?
Well, you could. It's got a long shelf life of waiting out the deferral and there's a partial deferral and a partial elimination of the gain. It's not maybe as straightforward as a 1031, but it is another deferral slash, it's a good deferral status. Why can't I think of the word? Eliminate. It actually eliminates part of your gain, whereas the 1031 doesn't, but it's a small portion of the overall picture.
Just a quick question on that real quick. Is there a sunset on those opportunity zones at this point?
You know, I think there is. I don't know that off the top of my head, but I believe that there is. Although I believe if you get in before that, you're okay to write it out for the 10. I think it's a 10-year cycle when your actual elimination happens. So, but yes, there is a sunset.
Interesting. Fantastic. Russell, do you want to unmute and introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name's Russ, and I am a professional photographer. And I know Rick, and I mentioned to him that I'm wanting to get into the real estate photography business and hang my shingle and start shooting properties and putting together little videos and things of that nature for folks that are maybe some listing agents or somebody who wants to sell their home. And so Rick invited me to this meeting. So
fantastic. Okay. Well, I think in terms of the real estate market, obviously it's on fire. So if you got in particular with listing agents and things of that nature, you could do very, very well. They probably can keep you extremely busy.
That's what I've been told. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say you're in the right market. So welcome. Naomi, I see you're out there. You want to unmute and introduce yourself?
I'm Naomi Pinger. I'm currently a real estate broker that is changing agencies again. Hopefully have that done tomorrow. I'm also a certified wholesaler, and I am also a private money broker. What else you need?
The new agency, where are you going to hang your hat?
EXP.
Ah, okay. EXP is a pretty large company. I've heard a lot of good things about EXP. So I would assume that is going to be very beneficial for you.
I hope so.
So is it EXP in the Thurston County area in Olympia, or whereabouts are you going to be at?
Well, it's actually EXP. You're kind of virtual most of the time. I think their office is probably in Lakewood or Puyallup.
Okay.
I don't know for sure.
Now,
I just signed up this morning, so.
Oh, okay. So it's you on an individual basis moving over to EXP as opposed to the office that you were in. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, from what I hear, you will enjoy it. I've heard that they've got a lot of very good tools that will be of great benefit to you. So I can't imagine that things would be nothing but good for you at EXP. So glad to hear that you're moving that way. Tell us about your private money. What have you got for private money?
Private money, I've got a lot of private money. You got to bring the deal in, and then we'll go through it and see what it is. But yeah, there's a lot of investors out there, especially since all of the banks and stuff have tightened up on their loan stuff. In fact, I found out that this morning that I don't qualify for a conventional loan now because I am self-employed. And so that was through a bank. So now I'm going to go back and talk to my private money guys and see what they can do for me. I'm looking at buying a property in Tennessee.
Yeah.
So, you know.
I have a friend of mine who's he's an insurance agent. He was talking to me yesterday about he's going to sell his agency, and then he's going to go down to Arizona, and he's going to join a real estate office. And I cautioned him. I said, listen, if you're thinking about buying a property, you should probably buy the property while you still have your insurance agency, and buy it as like a second home, and then or buy it on like a non-QM type loan, and with terms that are a little bit higher than Fannie and Freddie, and then sell your agency. And then that way you're not held up buying the new home, because once you switch to being a real estate agent, now all of a sudden you're self-employed in a new business, and you got to have 2 years under your belt in that business to average your income. So it sounds to me like there's going to be some similarities to what you're going through there.
Yes, this bunch just told me that they just flat out did not loan to people that were self-employed.
Oh, well, that's
Didn't
weird.
make any difference if you'd been in, didn't make any difference if you'd been at your job for 6, 8 years, whatever. So
Well, the
be careful, don't be cruel to those flies.
self-employed is no big deal. Terrell, you can attest to self-employed, right?
No, self-employed is that 2-year deal with us, and it can be fun.
Yeah, we do self-employed loans for people all the time, and you know, you got to get to that 2-year mark, and there's certain instances where you can do it for at less than 2 years, but you have to be coming from a related industry to the new industry that is very directly related. In your case, that might work for you, Naomi, but you know, we'd have to go through the guidelines and see if that's going to work. So we could talk about that later if your private money people don't have a better solution for you.
All right. I'll remember that.
Sounds good. Kim, do you want to unmute and introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Kim, and I flip houses in Lewis, Thurston, and Cowlitz counties, and so I'm always looking for a good deal. So if anybody hears of any good deals out there, let me know.
Hey, I sent Rick a really good deal the other day. It was a super awesome deal until we found out it was only half the duplex. Then it wasn't a very good deal after that.
So Kim, I did have a wholesaler contact me on a property here in Olympia. I can send you what they sent me, which includes their pro forma. I would caution you to take their ARV with a grain of salt. Their rehab estimates are probably pretty close, but it doesn't include, you know, hiring a contractor, I'm sure, based on the numbers that I saw. And their ARV seemed to be high. But, you know, if you can work out the numbers, you can certainly give them a holler.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you, Rick. I appreciate that.
Go ahead and put your information in the chat box, and I'll send that over to you.
Will do. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's for everybody. If everybody could go in and put your contact information into the chat box, we keep a directory. Caitlin will get everybody's information into the directory, and then that way we get the directory out to everybody, and anybody that's been with part of the group at any meeting can access the directory and look up individuals and do business amongst the group. And we typically have about 15 to 20. Tonight we're a little bit light, and I think a lot of that was because our presentator unfortunately wasn't able to present tonight. But you know, so we have maybe a little bit smaller group than we normally would. But normally on other meetings we'll have a much bigger, better group. And Gene is actually going to do the presentation next month, so that's going to be a very interesting presentation. Those that are very interested in tax strategies and ways to not pay Uncle Sam as much as you need to, as much as you could pay them if you're not deploying some of these strategies. So I'm very anxious to hear as much as I can hear. So that's a little little blurb on next month's meeting. And then we have a caller. I don't know the name, but if you're calling in on the phone, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, this is Dennis, man. I'm stuck in traffic driving.
Hey, Dennis, how's it going?
Hey, it's all right, man. It's all good.
Up towards Bellevue, huh?
Yeah, so I guess things are getting back to normal, it looks like to me.
Yeah.
At least with traffic. I don't know about anything else.
I tell you, yeah, that traffic anywhere up north is just painful at times. Holy cow.
So
How's,
I'm just
how's
listening,
Hill,
man.
how's Hill coming?
How's what?
How's Hill coming? You guys?
Pretty good. I'll find out more tomorrow. We're taking a trip up tomorrow.
Okay. What's your guys' projected completion on rehab on that one?
I don't know. We're going to be getting a inspection on the end of this week for all the framing, so I'm not sure how fast the finished part will go.
Okay.
I think a lot faster than the framing part for sure.
It better.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are using the same contractor for finish, or is it a different contractor for finish work?
Same one.
Okay. Yeah. Depends on how extensive your framing was. That was for the basement. Is that right?
Well, it was basement, kitchen, stairs, dining room, beams. Yeah, so it was pretty extensive. What he had to do.
Wow. Yeah, you guys are a bit more involved than what I knew there. So, okay, well, hey, we're getting ahead of the game on the loan side of it so that we're ready to go the moment you're ready to go. So, I think you've been talking to Terrell a bit more lately.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and mute out, or you can, if you can mute me, that'd be great, because I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
I got it.
Okay. Yeah, I'll mute you out. Okay. So that concludes the introduction phase. Today, it's more of a kind of just an update what's happening in the market in terms of the lending side of things. And then we wanted to talk a little bit about who's got what projects going, what is the area of concerns that people are looking at, and what are their game plans going forward. So the mortgage market in particular, the last 3 or 4 months is stabilized quite a bit. COVID did a number on the mortgage market when it first hit. From March through probably May, even into June, there was some big problems within the mortgage industry for certain kinds of loans. Some of the loans that initially went away were construction loans, non-QM loans. That whole industry went away for a period of time. It's making a comeback now. Construction loans are coming back, but construction loans are modified now. They're not quite what they used to be, so they're a bit more challenging than what they used to be. Most of the rest of the loans have come back. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are in the process of trying to be kicked out of conservatorship. That's a good thing. We want Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to be on their own footing. When Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were on their own footing, before they were told by the federal government that they were going to mandate to be going into conservatorship. So going back to 2008, 9, and 10, you had the big meltdown, but Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were sitting on trillions of dollars. And they could have easily rode through the meltdown, and it would have hit their bottom line, but they could have rode through it. They would have had the cash, and they would have, at that point, had plenty of reserves. The federal government, in its infinite wisdom, says, no, we're going to give you a bailout you have no choice. You have to take it. And oh, by the way, you're now in conservatorship. The U.S. government's going to take you over. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac paid back the loan with interest to the U.S. government, which is federal tax dollars, within a couple of years. And ever since that time frame, since about 2010, 2011, since they paid it all back, U.S. Treasury has went in and taken all their money. No reserves for you. You get no reserves. That money is the U.S. government's money. And now the U.S. government's saying, hey, we don't want to be in the loan business, but we can't let you go out of conservatorship until you have a certain amount of reserves. And had the U.S. government not been stealing their reserves, they would have had it. But they've been stealing them. So what does Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac do? Well, they hit us with a premium for certain kinds of loans. They did that a couple of months ago, and everybody screamed bloody murder because they didn't give anybody any advance warning, and bam, you're just hit with this extra fee that you wouldn't have had prior to that. Since then, there's been enough outcry that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac backed off that extra fee, and it now is becoming, it's hitting for anything that happens. I think it's after December 15th. So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac will boost their reserves through this additional fee because the U.S. government isn't going to return any money that they've been taken from them. And eventually, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac will be let go out of conservatorship, and they'll be on their own, like they've been for decades, 50 years, 70 years, right? And as we all know, this is my personal opinion, the U.S. government cannot run any kind of thing with any efficiency whatsoever. So it's always better that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are on their own because they're going to be very sensitive to what's happening in the market, and they're going to run their business the way they know they need to be running. So that's coming up. What else is coming up? Well, because of COVID, because of Congress' short-sighted plans because of COVID, they allowed all these forbearances to happen without any kind of big game plan as to how it would affect the mortgage industry. Right now, there was, last I knew, 3.4 million households in forbearance. Forbearance lasts for at most 12 months. 12 months puts it March of next year. So at some point, you got to pay the price. At some point, there's going to be people either getting foreclosed on or they're getting things worked out with their servicer on their loan. And what the industry is looking at, and what I'm hoping, praying that they actually do, is they take all this money that has been missed on these payments and they put it at the end of their loan. So anybody that can just pick up and start making their regular payment, there's no harm, no foul. You just pay an extra 12 months on the loan when it's all said and done. That's the least amount of harm that could come to any individual household. If they work it out and they say, okay, well, listen, you got to pay your regular payment, plus you got to pay another half a month payment for the next 12 to 24 months, that's going to put a huge financial burden on the household. And there's going to opportunities out there for somebody who's prepared. The other thing that I want to talk about is evictions. There's a moratorium on evictions right now. The Congress has, in their latest plan, there was basically an unlimited moratorium on evictions in that plan. That plan got shelved by Trump apparently today or just recently, because he does not want that to happen until after the Supreme Court nominee is settled, and possibly even the election. So that fight will be taken up sometime after the election. Just know that if you hold rentals, there's going to be some information in that legislation that could be good or bad for you. Be prepared, be ready. As a whole, the mortgage market is perfect. We've got incredibly low rates. We've never had these this low rates before. Rates are in the 2% range. They've been in the 2% range for about a month and a half, 2 months. The difficulty with that is we all knew that they were going to get to that low of a level. We knew that at the first of the year. The problem is there's so much business that it overloaded the mortgage industry as a whole. Our company was just as much a victim of that as any other company. Our turn times went unbelievably long, and we're just now starting to recover. We've hired more underwriters than we've ever hired in our history. They're getting up to speed right now, so our turn times are starting to get better, and in a week and a half, they're expecting our turn times to be back down to normal, which is 24 to 48 hours for an underwrite. I certainly hope, Terrell hopes that they get to that level very soon, because we've had files waiting. So that's the mortgage market update. It's not all bad, it's not all good, but we're headed in a much more positive area. Just be aware that there's going to be some things on the horizon that could be an opportunity, or it could be a problem. Any questions related to any of that?
Not related, but 1 second, sorry, I lost the chat. Jean wants to know, what is a QM loan?
Okay, so a QM or a non-QM. A QM is what's called a qualified mortgage. A qualified mortgage means that the legislation was written after the meltdown that says, okay, if you're going to write a qualified mortgage, then it has to be underwritten with proof of ability to repay, what's called the ATR, or ability to repay. So what it eliminated, so if you think about some of the loans that were available prior to the meltdown in 2008, some of the loans that were available were what's called no income, no asset. So basically, if somebody could fog a mirror and they had a decent credit score, they could get a loan. It eliminated all those. And now you must prove through traditional means. Traditional would be like if somebody's a W-2 wage earner, we got to have pay stubs, we got to have W-2s, you got to have tax returns to prove what their income is, and prove what their debt ratio is, and prove that they have the ability to repay the loan. Non-QM are loans that do not have to meet those guidelines. However, even though they don't have to meet those guidelines, they can't go totally off the deep end, meaning that you can't go back to what's called a no income, no asset loan. You still have to prove income, but you have to prove it in different ways. So like non-QM is, if somebody's self-employed, I can use 12 months of 12 or 24 months worth of personal business or bank statements, or 12 or 24 months worth of business bank statements. If it's personal bank statements, they're going to review all the deposits that went into that account for 12 or 24 months. They're going to back out any unusual deposits that wouldn't be pertaining to their business, and the rest of the deposits add up, and that makes their income. On business bank statements, then they're going to add up all the deposits and give you 50% of the deposits as your personal income, because they're going to say that your expenses of the business is 50% of your revenue. So we have loans of that nature. Now, the old no income, no asset, or also what is called a stated income loan, it's actually making a comeback. There are some.
I've heard they're making a comeback in the car buying arena,
Possible, yeah.
in more of a retail. Yeah. There was another name for them you haven't used, but you're being nice.
Wire loans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I can zero fingers how many of those loans I've done.
yeah. So, W-2 person, generally pretty easy to get through underwriting as a qualified. I'm just making an assumption.
Yep.
You know, that they've had the 2 years and they have the income. And then, but we also have self-employed people that can be QM, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So there's a two-pronged question. Of your applicants, roughly what's the percentage of self-employed, single, you know, that's their source of income? And of that group, how many aren't bankable?
So
How's that?
That's a good question. So of the loans that I do, I'm going to say roughly 50% of my loans are from real estate investors, maybe as much as 60 at certain points. Real estate investors are always considered self-employed because anybody who has rental property on their tax return, they fall into the self-employed category. And therefore, we must supply tax returns. If I've got other than real estate and they're just truly self-employed, then of course, we always have to supply tax returns. We don't have to supply tax returns on W-2 wage earner borrowers. It's rare that we actually have to supply tax returns. In place of the tax returns, we do have to supply 1 or 2 years worth of W-2s. And then of course, even though we're not getting tax returns, we have to get a tax transcript on every borrower that we do. So for those borrowers that are supplying tax returns, we're vetting out their tax returns through the tax transcript. For those that don't supply it, it doesn't matter, we're gonna get it anyway. So, and to answer your question, how many fall into the category of, what was it?
They're not bankable.
Not
You're
bankable?
Yeah, I don't even know if that's the right term. It's a term I've heard.
It's a legitimate term, but it's not going to fall into legitimacy with me because somebody who's not, so what not bankable means is you're not able to get a Fannie Freddie loan when it comes to real estate, residential real estate. That's bankable, right? So anybody that falls into a not bankable generally can fit into a non-QM.
Something else, okay.
So for instance, I've got one of my borrowers, we got the tax return, looked at the tax return, there is not enough income at all to be bankable, right? I'm like, oh man. So we had to pivot, and now we're doing 12 months bank statements or 24 months bank statements, and we can prove income through the bank statements, and we'll go non-QM on that. So
okay,
it doesn't really, I've got so many boxes that I could put somebody in. If they're bankable or not bankable, it doesn't matter. It just dictates what direction I go.
What can they where can they qualify? It's probably a better way.
Yeah.
You can say, okay, they don't fit in this bucket, so I'm going to send them down this road or whatever. So,
well, the other thing about bankable that we find all the time. So let's say that somebody's not bankable today, but it's a temporary situation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 2 years from now, they might be bankable.
Right.
So they
it's
take
a snapshot in time that they're not bankable.
Right. And what I tend to do is I'll counsel them, I'll coach them of the things that they need to do to become bankable within the next year or 2 years so that they can refinance. So for instance, without saying the type of business that it is, I've got some friends that are business owners, and as business owners typically do, they like to pay the least amount of taxes they can, and they've got legitimate write-offs. They can write everything under the sun off. That's great for taxes. That's terrible for loans. You have to show enough income that you can get the loan that you might want to get. So I'll counsel them and say, okay, listen, we got you through this time, but maybe you're non-QM and I want to move you to Fannie and Freddie for better terms in a year or two. In order to do that, don't write off anymore. You got to show this much income. If you show this much income, that works for your debt ratio. In a year or two, I'll refinance you. If you show less than that and your debt ratio is too high, you're not going to be bankable at that point, and I can't move you to better terms. Now, do they listen? They listen today. Do they listen 2 years from now? I don't know.
Yeah, that's very common. I get people, that are, like you said, they want to pay, and understandably, they want to pay the least amount of tax, and then they come crying to you when they can't get the truck loan or the house loan or the bank loan or whatever because they don't show any enough income. So it's a dance, and you just have to decide what your goal is. You can boost your income, get your loan, and then go back to paying a lower tax rate. Anyway. Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah.
So you made mention on a term there that I think is really good to get into, and that is you made mention of the DTI. Yep. Okay. So and that makes whether you're bankable or not. So can you explain for everyone what DTI and how that affects your bankability?
Okay, so I'll go just a little bit further. Let me hit the few key items that make somebody bankable, whether they're W-2 wage earner or they're self-employed. So the first thing is the credit score. When COVID hit, all the credit scores got cranked up. I think at our worst, you had to have a 660. Prior to COVID, we could do it down to 600 on certain kinds of loans. Since COVID has kind of worked itself out, the minimum credit score on most programs are 620 now. I do have one loan program that is still at 640, and that's what's called a Washington State bond loan. The Washington State bond loan is designed to give somebody down payment assistance. So like if somebody's doing an FHA loan, they need a 3.5% down payment. Well, the Washington State bond will step in and give that person 4%. 3.5% for the down payment, the other 0.5% goes towards their closing costs. You got to have a 640 for that credit score for that particular program. Most all of our other programs are down to a 620. So that's one element. Another element is the debt ratio allowance on the individual loan program. So right now, the debt ratio allowance, and I say right now because it's going to change, is 50% of your gross income. So let's just say for round numbers, somebody made $10,000 a month, then the most that you could have for all your chargeable debt plus the new loan that you're wanting to qualify for would be $5,000 a month in total chargeable debt, including the new loan that you're going to qualify for. That would give you a 50% debt ratio. If you're over 50%, there are things that we can do. We might look at some debts that you want to pay off to help reduce your debt ratio and get you below the threshold. We could pay those off through escrow. You could pay them off in advance. Recently, I had a couple that had a couple of cars that they had taken out the loans on a couple of years ago. The interest rates are a lot better now. We had them refinance their cars, got better monthly payments on the cars. That helped lower their debt ratio. There's a number of things that we could do that way that would potentially help. And it also depends. Is it a purchase? Is it a refinance? But 50% is the number you generally got to count on there, with the exception of 2 loans. So 50% would be your Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac type loans. Government loans are different. Government can take on more risk. So an FHA loan is a government loan. A USDA loan is a government loan, and a VA loan is a government loan. What's unusual is with all 3 of those, you get wildly different debt ratio allowances. I'm going to start with the least. That's USDA. They have a hard and fast 41%. The reason they have a hard and fast 41% is that USDA is designed for lower income purchases, and they don't want to put that person in a position where they have too much debt because they tend to be on the lower end of the scale in terms of income. So they're very sensitive about letting that person have too much debt. So 41% is your hard and fast on USDA. Next is FHA. FHA is probably the most widely used loan product out there it's not a first-time purchase product, but it's used most often on first-time purchases. The debt ratio allowance on FHA is 56.9%. I can go to 56.9%. It's much, well, it's quite you can qualify for more on a purchase on FHA than you can on Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. The drawback to FHA is it has mortgage insurance on the loan for the life of the loan, unless you have 10% down or more. So the only way you get rid of mortgage insurance on an FHA loan is you gain the equity over appreciation for maybe 2 or 3 or 4 years. And then once you feel like you've got the equity, you refinance it into a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac loan. That gets rid of the mortgage insurance. Last is VA. The reason I bring up VA last is VA has a soft debt ratio of about 41, 43%. But VA has what's called the residual income test. And if you exceed the residual income test requirements, and what I mean by that is, let's say you had a family of 3 living in the western states. The residual income requirement on that is $990 a month. So what that means is, take that $990, add it to the new proposed mortgage payment, and let's say that those two numbers together come to $3,000. If you've got more than by 20%, so if you have $3,600 versus $3,000, you've now surpassed the residual requirement test by 20%. Guess what your debt ratio can go to? It's been as high as 81%.
What?
Yep. I've got a couple that I've got approved right now with a 60% debt ratio on a VA, because they've got really strong credit and they far surpass the residual income requirement. I got an approval on a 60% debt ratio. That was also the same couple that I had refinance their cars to get them down to 60%. So
is residual kind of like discretionary, do you think? Is that what they're trying to say? Okay.
Yeah, that's what they're saying is they want you to have, based on your family size and based on what location of the country that you live in, because certain parts of the country are a bit more expensive than others. So on the West Coast, they deem it a bit more expensive. So a 3-person household has to have $990 in discretionary income over and above their mortgage payment, because they're looking at things like utilities and things like that. And they feel like if this couple or this person has at least that much money, then they've passed their discretionary income test. So therefore they can allow them to exceed the standard debt ratios. And I don't know what the actual upper limit is. No one knows. But what I can tell you is I know loan officers that got 81% debt ratios approved.
So I'm sorry.
I've personally got it approved to 60. That's my high.
So is the context of the payment, is that always PITI?
Yep.
When you're doing the calculation? Okay.
Does everybody know what PITI is?
No.
Principal, interest, taxes, and insurance.
Yep. Principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. How about PITIA? Did I fool you with that A, Rick?
Yeah.
Association dues.
Oh, HOA fees.
Yep. You got it.
Yeah, Rick, it should be PITIH, shouldn't it?
Yeah, no doubt.
They call it A. I don't know why they do.
Well, homeowner association. It could be a different kind of association.
Yeah. So I'm always having to work from the standpoint of PITI. Unless there's an HOA, then I got to go the HOA in there as well. and figure everything from that standpoint. So when a customer comes to me and, like, let's say I've got a new buyer and they don't know what they're wanting to get qualified for, I'll have a couple of conversations with them. The first thing I want to do is I want to get them approved for the maximum that they could possibly have. Not that they need to use that, but at least that way they're approved to whatever their threshold maximum is based on their debt ratio. But that's not really where the rubber meets the road. Where the rubber meets the road is I always have a conversation. I say, okay, well, listen, you're paying $1,200 a month on rent. What is the maximum dollar amount you would feel comfortable paying as a mortgage payment? Because there's a good chance I could qualify you for a whole lot more than you would actually feel comfortable paying. So let's target in on what is that maximum payment. And then that way I can tell you, okay, your maximum purchase price based on your down payment and based on the loan program that you're going to use, the maximum purchase price can be here to maintain that payment that you want to target. And it happens a lot. I just approved somebody for almost a $400,000 loan the other day, but I can tell you based on conversations and everything else, they're not going to feel comfortable making a payment on $400,000. Maybe three, but probably not four. So I've got to explain, hey, you're approved up to $400,000, but if you want to maintain a payment at this level instead of this up here, we got to target maybe a $300,000 house instead of a $400,000 house. So,
because this group has a lot of target for investors, and a lot of the stuff that you've been talking about is definitely helpful for the private. I'm purchasing my primary residence kind of information. So now let's get into a little bit more information about what that means for the investors. So I'm going to go back to the debt ratio. Okay. So I buy a house. Now I want to buy another house. Okay. At what point am I no longer able to buy a house? Or continue buying more houses?
That's the common misconception and misunderstanding that beginning investors might have until they are told how it really works. What I mean by that is the thought process somebody would go through is, okay, I'm buying this rental property. My debt ratio is going to go up because I'm buying this rental property. And at some point, I'm going to be capped out because my debt ratio is too high. I can't buy any further properties after that because my debt ratio is too high. That is the misconception. The reality is when you buy a rental property, whether that property is rented at the time that you close the loan or it's vacant, you're going to get credit for what the market value on the property rents will be. So Rick and I just went through this with his deal. Do you mind if I use yours as an example?
Be my guest.
Okay. So Rick hadn't had it leased yet at the time that I did the appraisal. When I do the appraisal, I've got to have two components on the appraisal. The appraiser has to determine what the market value for the sale of that property, if it were to sell, what is the market value of the property. Then the appraiser has to do what's called income analysis. The income analysis is where they're going to show what the market rents for that property are, and they're also going to show what the the rental comps are for that given property. In Rick's case, he hadn't, I told him before we did the appraisal, I said, listen, the appraiser's going to go out here, he's going to do this, and he's going to come back with this value. And, I don't know what his value is going to be, but I suspect you're going to be in a lot better position if you have a lease on that property than if we go with the appraiser's value. Because Rick and I had talked and we knew more of where that property was going to lease at versus what we suspected the appraisal would come in. So sure enough, the appraisal comes in, and what does it tell me that the rental market value of that property was? It said it was $1,000. Rick and I laughed, And then very shortly
Out
thereafter,
loud.
he got it leased. I won't say what he got it leased for, but let's just say it was well north of what that
I'll,
1,000.
I'll say it.
Okay,
I'll say it because now you're not breaking confidentiality. We ended up
Okay.
leasing it for $1,595.
$600 a month more than what that appraiser said that the market value of the lease was.
That's here. Let's put it in perspective. That's 60% more than what the appraiser said.
So now let's go into how that works. So the misconception is that you're going to add to your debt ratio by buying a rental property. That's only true if you buy the rental property badly, meaning you overpay for it. You overpay for what the kind of rents that property would throw off. It's not true if you're buying the property at a decent price and your all-in costs are at a decent enough price that you're renting that property for a decent cash flow over and above what your mortgage payment is. And the reason it's not true is you get to immediately count the rents, whether that property is vacant or not. So in a case where it's leased, we're going to go off the lease. In a case where it's vacant, we're going to go off of what the appraiser says the market value of the rents on that property are going to be. So I'm just going to use some fictitious numbers, but I'm kind of going to pull the one appraiser's number from Rick's. Let's say that the appraiser said it was worth only $1,000. And let's say that Rick's mortgage payment is $800 a month with taxes, insurance, everything, right? So you would think, okay, he's got $200 a month cash flow. Well, not quite. The mortgage industry says, we're going to take that lease of $1,000 and you're going to get a 25% cut right off the top because that's got to go to cover maintenance, CapEx, and property management and all those kinds of things. So if you had $1,000, cutting 25% off that is going to be $750. So now you thought you had a $200 a month cash flow, but the reality is $50 a month hits your debt ratio. That's not really a lot, $50. But it could make the difference to where it moves the needle just enough on your debt ratio that your debt ratio maybe starts climbing up or maybe gets too high. Now let's do the difference. Rick's leased it at $1,600 a month just to make round numbers. And 75% of 1,600 is 1,200. And let's say his mortgage payment is $800. So now he's cash flowing $400 a month. So what did he do with his debt ratio? He just dropped his debt ratio by $400 a month, or maybe as much as 10%. So if you buy right and lease it right, you will actually lower your debt ratio. So you can buy wealth, buy your income, and it will actually lower your debt ratio if you do it right. If you do it wrong, it's going to keep your debt ratio the same or raise it. That's where the misconception comes in. So you just got to know how the mortgage industry works and understand that, hey, if I buy this thing right, I can go buy, maybe today I could only buy one, but after I buy this one, I just increase my income. And because I increase my income, my debt ratio is lower. I can go buy two more right after that, as long as I have down payments. So how do we solve the down payment issue, Rick?
I'm sorry, what's that?
How do we solve the down payment issue?
How did we? Or how, or
what's the game plan for that?
So in some instances, we're using some private money to come up with the down payment, then hard money to do the actual purchase and rehab, and then refinance and pull money out, or as close to it as possible. So I was kind of giving Kevin a little heads up. I ran the final numbers on that particular property that we were just talking about, and after we closed on it in February, so that's 7 months.
Yep.
after everything is said and done, I got this property that's giving me a couple of $100 a month in cash flow, and I only have about $5,000 of my own money left in the deal.
Yeah. It appraised. We got a decent appraisal, and getting a decent appraisal allows him to get the bulk of his cash back out of the property based on the maximum cash out limits through Fannie and Freddie. So the way it works is, if somebody wants to get in this business, they have to have at least a starting nest egg. If they have a starting nest egg, and that could be anywhere from $30,000 to $70,000 would be my suggestion, then they could use that $30,000 to $70,000 for their initial down payment and any expenses that they're going to have for that the lender's not going to cover on the rehab, and carrying costs. And then when they're done with the rehab, and so long as they've been on title for 6 months or more, they can refinance through a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac loan, pull cash out up to 75% of whatever the appraised value is, and hopefully we get a decent enough appraisal that that's enough for them to get all their money they put into the property back out of the property. That fills their nest egg again. They now have money to go to the next deal.
So that's where you were going with the down payment question.
Yeah,
so how did I start this deal? Was we refinanced our personal property, pulled out some equity, still maintaining a minimum of 20% on our personal, gave us some money to actually then get a hard money loan for the purchase, for acquisition and rehab, and go through this whole process that we just talked about. And it actually left me enough money to partner with Dennis on a second property that we're doing the exact same thing with.
And that's happening at the same time.
Simultaneously.
He was doing 2 deals at the exact same time, and that's how he got off the ground. And when I get done completing the refinance on both of these deals for him, his money for the most part will be replenished. He'll have enough money. He can go out and get another 2 deals going at the same time if he wants to. And think about it. Every time he's adding cash flow, that's basically giving him a personal raise. And then it's also doing an amazing thing giving him an amazing thing called depreciation. So we all heard that Uncle Trump here pissed everybody off, and he only paid $750 in taxes, right?
I call that pretty smart.
Yeah, I call that pretty smart too. So let's dissect that for just a second. So I've heard that his existing real estate portfolio is in excess of $2 billion in value. That's today's value. That's not the value when he bought it. But when you buy real estate, rental real estate, you have what's called a basis. What the basis is made up of is the total cost for that property minus the land value. So let's say you buy a property for $200,000, and let's say that the land value is deemed at $50,000. So you now get to write that property off, if it's residential, for 27 and a half years. The $150,000 gets written off over 27 and a half years, unless you can find a way to accelerate it. And there are ways to accelerate depreciation. So think about Trump. Let's assume his basis was $2 billion in these properties. Now, on commercial property, you depreciate it for 39 years instead of 27 and a half. I took $2 billion and divided it by 39 years. His write-off, just for depreciation, not for any other write-off, just depreciation, is $51 million a year. That means he gets to make $51 million and not pay a dime in taxes on it. That's the beauty of real estate. That's what real estate can do for investors. So When Rick is sitting over here building his portfolio, he's already got 2, and he's going to, after this, he's going to go get his 3rd, his 4th, his 5th. You know, he's got great plans for building the portfolio. Every time he buys a property, he gets cash flow off of it, he gets write-offs off of it, and he gets depreciation. What do you want to bet all of his profits that he makes off of real estate, he will never pay a dime in taxes on?
That's my goal.
That's the beauty of real estate. So, but you got to kick me off my soapbox. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
On a refinance, if you, or let's see, what do you call it? When you pull out equity, does that raise your payments then? That's like you renew your loan for a bigger price and it also raises your payments on it?
Maybe.
Maybe, yeah.
It depends on what your existing interest rate is and how much cash you're pulling out. If you've got a higher interest rate and you're just pulling, you know, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, but you're lowering your interest rate by a good margin, 1 or 2, maybe even 2.5 points, you could end up with a lower monthly payment and the cash in hand. So it just depends on what your existing balance is and what your existing interest rate is compared to what the current market rates are and how much cash you're going to pull out.
Can I comment on that, or if you're done, Naomi?
Yes, go ahead.
So it's a common thing that people do what Rick did, where they leverage the equity in their primary residence by taking cash out to purchase an investment property. And I would just urge you to work real closely with your tax preparer to have them use the tracing rules, because our standard deduction is so high. If they just dump that on your Schedule A because they think it's for your house, obviously your house secured it, but that's not really where the money went. And it should go on your E or on your C or wherever it should follow. It should follow the investment. Does that make sense?
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, yes.
Light bulb.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
So, most people don't think about that. They're not me being, a tax preparer, but those tracing rules are real important. And so much stuff gets lost on the Schedule A because the standard deduction is so high, which that's not a bad thing. I'm not making a commentary about that, but that's why it's so important to be, finding other ways to utilize those deductions in other ways. So that's my soapbox.
So what Gene's getting at, I think it was a couple of years ago, you could take out a HELOC and it was tax deductible for the most part. Now, if you take out a HELOC on your primary residence, it depends on what you're going to use the money for. If you use the money for investment purposes, meaning business type purposes, you can still write it off. But if you use it for like home improvement or consumer debt or something like that, then you can't write that off. So that's where she's talking about the tracing rules. What are you doing with the money? If you're using the money to invest in some kind of business or rental real estate or whatever, then it becomes a tax write-off. Whereas if you use it for some consumer purposes, the answer is no, it's not a tax write-off. So there's additional things that you can write off. And depreciation is just one item that on a rental property that you get. You get a write-off all your mortgage interest, your insurance payments, and various expenses that you have against the property. So that's why I say, let's say an average property only throws off, say, $5,000 or $6,000 a year in depreciation. Well, and let's say that you potentially made more than that in the revenue. Well, you still are going to have your other write-offs that you get a write-off. And so when it's all said and done, that rental property most likely on paper showed that you lost money. But that's on paper. That's not reality. Reality is it put money in your pocket. So that's the tax laws are very, very, very favorable for people that own real estate. And I don't see that changing. And the reason I don't see that changing is the real estate market as a whole is 1/5 of the US economy. If they changed the legislation in a big, big way that negatively impacted people that owned commercial real estate or rental real estate, that will have an impact on our economy that would not be good.
Well, and you're right. This qualified business income deduction that was introduced in 2018 applies to rental income. It rises to the level of a trade or business. And that was kind of put in at the last minute because there were some senators that held real estate. And they said, well, wait a minute, we don't pay wages. How can we get in on this credit? And so that's where your unadjusted basis of your property, no matter what it is, whether it's real estate or your log skidder or whatever. So I agree with you. There's a lot of people in those kind of positions, Trump being one of them, obviously, that are heavily invested in real estate. And I agree with you. I think it's so lucrative. You can have one guy who has one rental and they are so favorable. The IRS says, well, that rises to the level of a trade or business. And you now have unlocked tax deductions, qualified business income. I mean, you're right. You're so right, Kevin. Do you hear that all the time, right?
No. God, I hope I'm right. Well, if I'm wrong, oh my God. No, I've been on the real estate investment train for so many years, and I've studied the tax laws, and you just got to know this business inside and out. And once you really start seeing all the benefits that come from this business, it's such a hard business to turn a blind eye to, because number one, think about it. So you own a trucking company. How easy is it to get new loans for equipment and this and that and the other? Well, for some people it's not hard, but for maybe people starting out, it's tough. It's a lot easier for you to get a real estate loan. You can get a real estate loan on a non-owner occupied for as little as 15% down, or even better, if you happen to have a hard money lender that will do 10% down on the acquisition and they'll do 100% on the rehab, you really only into it for 10%. I have hard money lenders that will do that.
To your point about the trucking, I used to work in commercial lending, and these people would come in and want to make a purchase, and it was like they had to be at a position where they didn't need the money in order to get the loan.
Yeah, and real estate is not that way.
Right. The collateral. Yeah.
If you tick the boxes, deal's done, and it's really not that hard to tick the boxes. A 620 score, a debt ratio of 50% or less, and provable income for 2 years. That's it. So it's really not that difficult. And if somebody, what typically happens is somebody comes to me and they say, hey, I'm wanting to do this. They don't have the full game plan kind of mapped out, and I will show them options of how they can get in. Maybe they need that starting cash pool for their down payments, and maybe they're going to flip. Maybe they're going to do a BRRRR model. Maybe they don't want to do either one. They just want to buy a rental. I can custom make the game plan for them that will get them the cash that they need for the down payments and the closing costs and that kind of thing. And then I can go forward with the game plan for however they're going to acquire the property. Are they going to buy a property that needs rehab? Are they going to, if so, are they going to flip it, or are they going to BRRRR model it, or are they buying a property that's ready, set, go, maybe even has renters in it already? So commercial's a lot the same way. You believe it or not, people can buy multi-units. So a multi-unit on commercial is considered anything 5 units and above. So 5 units and above is commercial, 4 units and down is residential. And believe it or not, it's not real hard to buy a 20 or 100 unit apartment complex. Just tick the boxes. You got the down payment, you got the credit, got some experience, loan's done. So, yeah.
Ask a question.
Yeah.
So this is only granted my second meeting. And while you're talking, I'm thinking about what I might want to talk about next time. And for me, rentals, obviously there's investment, but sometimes people do Airbnb. I mean, it doesn't sound like anybody's really, is that even on anybody's radar in this group? I'm not.
I see opportunities quite often in the Ocean Shores area.
Mm-hmm.
It's the market is just crazy right now, and a lot of stuff comes up, and it would be a good location for an Airbnb. From an investment perspective, I think that is probably a really good decision to make. But where I'm at personally, Hoquiam is far enough, and until I get a broader network to be able to handle the turns on an Airbnb, I don't want to think about it. Could there be some really good money?
It's not about you, Rick. It's not all about you, Rick, is it?
Well, that's the way I think.
It is.
Right.
Okay. Well, I think you answered my question.
Yeah, but I have thought about it, and I think there's some excellent opportunity for Airbnbs out on the beach. With that said, you could have some good Airbnbs even here.
My brother's going to do one in Gig Harbor. I mean, they're right on his property. So anyway, I think you answered my question. Thank you. Thanks, Rick, for letting me razz you.
Actually, I want to kind of expand on that. Naomi, I'm sure you've seen a few Airbnbs in your travels. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I can't think of their last name, but Jake and his brother brought the 10 unit property over on Yelm Highway, and they did excellent with the Airbnb. I was amazed that they did that well with it. And that was over, all there was around there was Macintosh Lake that was across the road from it. So I would not turn my self off on Airbnb. I don't know exactly what the upkeep is on them, because if you rented them out for like a weekend or something, you would have to have somebody in place to go in and clean them for the next one. But so I don't know what the maintenance and upkeep would be on them, but they are a moneymaker from what I hear.
They are. I've talked to Jake, and matter of fact, there's some things that he and I are going to do on that property. But yeah, they make very good money off of it, off the unit. So what they've got is they've got most of the units as just long-term rentals, and I think that they've got 1 or 2 units that is an Airbnb. The unit that they have that's set up for Airbnb is really a nice unit, and they turn some very good money off of that unit. And what they do is they have somebody that is a tenant in one of the other units that is the person that handles the cleaning and things of that nature for basically a reduced rent on their place. And so that works out quite well. I've got another customer in the Texas area. He's up here now, but he moved up here, but he's got a couple of Airbnbs in Galveston, and I'm working to get those refinanced. So they're refinanceable, yes. They come with challenges. So when I say they come with challenges, so on a long-term rental, you're going to derive your income through one of two places. It's either going to be you're going to have it leased, or you're going to have the appraiser say that the market value for that rental property is XYZ. The problem with an Airbnb is the person that's renting it out as an Airbnb maybe has had it for a year and they want to use the full amount of the income that it's made, because it's made like $40, $50, $60,000 for the year in terms of total revenue, which is quite a bit more than it would have received if it was just a long-term rental. The problem is, at that point, you're considered self-employed, and it's a 2-year average that we've got to take on it. So in that first 2 years, if they wanted to do other loans, it's difficult for them to qualify because we don't have a 24-month average. So we're not looking at it from a lease standpoint. We're not looking at it from what an appraiser is saying. Now, if we're actually doing the refinance of that particular property, yeah, we can go off of what the appraiser is saying for what it would lease for the market rents. But let's say that appraiser says it's worth $1,000 a month, so $12,000 for the year for revenue. But let's say that on Airbnb they're making $50,000 a year. Well, they want to use the $50,000 a year, but I can't use the $50,000 a year because they don't have 2 full years that I can average. And it not only has to be 2 full years, I have to show it on the tax return. So from the time that they bought it, if they bought it in January of a given year, they got to get till probably March of 2 years from now. So that's 2.25 years before I can actually start counting it. So that's where it's a bit of a challenge if they're just starting out. But if they're not just starting out, they've got the experience under their belt, we can count the income, and it's fully refinanceable just like anything else. It's fully financeable just like anything else.
So I'm going to kind of jump in on this one a little bit. So this is where, as a beginning investor, it is very advantageous to maintain a W-2 position. That's where, for myself, I happen to have a W-2 position. So, that's taken care of. And I would highly recommend anybody that is starting in real estate investing, don't quit your day job.
Yeah.
Don't quit your day job for a couple of years. The real estate will make you the wealth, but it's going to take a little time to make that happen. And by utilizing that W-2 earnings, that's going to enable you to buy the property because you have your debt ratio in check. Hopefully.
That's 100% accurate, and that's a very legitimate comment to make. And I don't see it that often, but occasionally I get somebody that's all excited and they go and quit their W-2 job, and now they can't buy the next place. So it doesn't happen a lot, but
yeah, I would really like Russell, be quiet. I would really like to give up my W-2 job.
Yeah. Well, hey, we got to get you there first. So.
Hi, Kat. My boss is on Russell's shoulder.
Rick.
She didn't hear. Oh, yeah. No. Hi, Kat. Hi, boss.
I don't have my boss except for Caitlin on the line, and I pay the price every day from her. So there's no escaping my boss. So. Yeah, that pretty much covers the basics that the average person would kind of run through. The other thing too that is somewhat commonplace that someone might want to consider: buying multiple units, buying a 4-unit versus a single family unit. There's a lot of power in doing that because you got 4 units to rent. You're going to far exceed your mortgage payment on it, and you're going to cash flow that much easier. You got 1 roof instead of 4. You still have 4 individual units, so you got 4 water heaters and things like that. But there is a certain amount of economies of scale that you can get buying a 2, 3, or 4 unit versus a single fam. The only drawback to that is there's not as many available on the market because everybody knows that they're a bit more cash flow. So, people don't like to give them up. So, but that's a good area to go after. We've had previous guests that have had very good experience getting manufactured homes in park and selling them either on contract or leasing them out. It depends on the park as to whether or not you can actually lease it out. But they've shown very, very good cash flow just by putting a few $1,000s into a rehab on a manufactured home in a park and then turn around and sell it on contract and getting the cash flow from the contract. So there's a number of different ways somebody might go about all this. Naomi, you've got some experience there, right?
What I wanted to point out is I was looking at two houses on a property in Tennessee. They're both rented. However, they both need maintenance. So the only thing that's the drawback there is right now you can't evict. You can't put somebody out. So how long is that going to go on?
That's the scary part. Is the newest legislation that I saw is they didn't have a very short time frame on the moratorium. Now that legislation hasn't been hammered out between the parties yet. I gotta believe by the time that they actually hammer it out, they're going to have a more realistic time frame on the moratorium. But as landlords, we have all got to be cognizant of that, because you get a person in there that either can't make the payment because of the situation with COVID, or worse yet, a person that could make the payment but chooses not to. You're still on the hook for that payment. And
that's right.
So you must be very, very careful about who you put in your properties.
So,
Go ahead.
So on that, there's a lot of misunderstanding on that moratorium as well. The moratorium is, they can't kick you out for lack of payment, but if the lease expires, or if they've broken the lease for whatever reason, that's not subject to the eviction.
Oh, okay. That's good information.
So yeah, so the moratorium is only if they're not making the payments. They're not paying rent because of a lack of ability to pay rent or whatever. But it's because of not paying rent that they can't be evicted. But if they violate the lease in any other way, you can still evict them, even during COVID.
But you can't evict them if you want to go in and clean up the property and install a new renter. Is that right?
Well, so here's something to think about. You definitely want to take a closer look at it, but you want to definitely look at what their current lease is, and if they're on a month-to-month lease, you can choose not to renew that month-to-month lease. Now, if they're on a 1-year lease and they're 6 months into the lease, you have to honor that.
Yeah. Okay. I only do my rentals on a month-to-month.
That's one positive to doing only month to month.
Yes.
Well, and Naomi, I think you got to watch each individual state, because each individual state probably has its own set of guidelines besides the legislation that's kind of coming out. I would suspect that Washington is different than other states. I've heard that Washington has some of the more onerous laws on the books for landlords in certain areas.
Yeah. Especially Seattle.
Yeah, Seattle. It's just, there's a lot of landlords that are selling because they're done with the crazy laws that are coming out.
I wouldn't even buy a single family home in Seattle. I wouldn't
Yeah.
buy a popsicle in Seattle.
Well, and who knows, the political environment in Seattle, I've heard recently got ratcheted up. From what I understand, the Seattle City Council has passed now and is going after Amazon for a per head tax. And they've threatened Amazon. And so guess what happens when all that comes together? The eventual move is
The last one
Amazon.
out turns lights off.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Boeing's already out of there. So,
Yep.
um,
And Inslee had the guts to order them to bring those jobs back after all of the stuff. And they said, we're not coming back because Seattle allows the rioting and burning of businesses and is not a business-friendly state or city. So what's he going to do when Amazon leaves?
yeah, I don't know that Amazon's leaving. I'm just looking at the situation, and I don't know what the level of taxation is going to be. I don't even know if it's constitutional, but it's a fight that if you're a business owner, especially a large business owner like that, you've got to start taking those things into account, because there are certain areas of the country that are much more favorable for business, and there are certain areas of the country that are becoming harder and harder to do business. And the unfortunate thing is, let's say that Amazon, for the most part, pulled up stakes. Let's say they left a few thousand people here and they moved because they've got other headquarters in other parts of the country. If that happened, that hurts every resident of Washington State.
Mm-hmm.
When Boeing takes the Dreamliner to North Carolina, we're going to feel that. And
You bet.
so that is going to trickle down to landlords. That's going to trickle down to, so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, your comment with regards to Seattle, right now, I don't know. I'd be nervous a little bit if I owned some properties in Seattle in terms of what is it going to do on the appreciation rate, and what is it going to do on the rentals, and is it going to become a problem? And the nice thing is, at least a lot of the legislation that's coming out is really centered around Seattle. In terms of rentals, it's not getting too far outside of Seattle. So Seattle landlords are dealing with things that people in other parts of the state are not having to deal with. So at least thank God for that. But you got to, as a landlord, you got to think these things through, and you've got to see what's coming down the pike, and what's the possibility, and because you're in it for the long haul, and so you got to be careful a little bit.
So
Well,
that's part of the reason why the 20% increase in the market in Grays Harbor, because, and I'm talking to a couple of different realtor friends of mine down there, and they're saying, the people that are coming down there and making offers on those houses down there, they're leaving the urban area. They're saying, we don't want to live here no more because of, first of all, we found out that we can work remotely. And I can get out of the house, and I don't have to worry about, riots going on. I don't have to be worried about just being stuck in traffic. And so they're leaving the Seattle metro area, and they're going out and buying and paying cash in Grays Harbor because the property is so much cheaper there.
Well, even my crew. So COVID hits, and my crew was here at my home office. I had as many at one time as 5 people working from the home office, and COVID hit, and we decided, okay, we need to spread out. And so my crew is working from their individual homes. We have Zoom meetings every day, and we very effectively get our work done. I think my employees like it better. They're more comfortable. Okay. I'm getting a thumbs up from Terrell. He's happy. Caitlin has to get out of the house every once in a while to to make sure that she still has a life outside the house. But and I have to as well. It's like a field day for me to go to the Minute Mart down the road because I don't leave the house that often. But anyway, yeah, those kinds of things are happening for people, and I think COVID was part of the instrumental change that is kind of driving that. But I think that there's going to be more and more people that realize, hey, we don't need to be surrounding these urban centers, and the urban centers are kind of, I mean, we got Seattle and Portland, and I've got to believe there's a lot of people in both of those cities that really aren't happy and don't want to be there. I literally just closed a loan for a longtime customer of mine. They left Lacey and moved to Chehalis for that very same reason. And I
Well,
wouldn't
that's
have
one of
thought- Yeah, go ahead.
that's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons that the prices in Olympia, and now they're down to Centralia and Chehalis. They've already hit Elma and Montesano and stuff. That's the reason their prices went up so much in the housing, was because people started leaving Seattle a long time ago because of the prices and stuff that was going on up there. So it's just like a mushroom. It's billowing out. But when you take 30,000 employees for Boeing out of the marketplace up there, you're going to probably see, I would think, that it would affect their housing market up there to bring their prices down. 30,000 people is a lot of people.
Yeah, honestly, and you start getting a swing one way or another. It doesn't take that many people in terms of that swing, and all of a sudden the pendulum swung, and it starts driving the market in a different direction. And so, yeah, that is concerning. Generally speaking, though, there's an overall lack of inventory on the market, and that inventory, the lack of inventory, took place when we had the meltdown in 2008. The builders took it on the chin in a big way back then. So the builders across the United States haven't been building to the level that they normally would have after 2008. So we're not going to work our way through this lack of inventory problem for a number of years yet. So because of that, and also because interest rates are scheduled to remain as low as possible through 2023, we're going to continue to see some upward pressure on homes. But, you know, at some point you got to think that it's going to level off.
Well, I would think right now the place to look at properties for investment properties would be in South Carolina or North Carolina, wherever Boeing's going to, because they're going to be desperately short of housing back there. So their prices are really going to be a premium.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, I can't remember. Amazon had a second headquarters. Sorry, let me turn my text.
The timeline on the Boeing move. I mean, I can't imagine that's quick but probably what, 12 to 24 months?
They've already got a plant. They've already got
I
plants
know,
back.
I know, but still
Yeah.
tooling up, and
They've
I guess
already-
it's probably.
They've already got a factory already in North or South Carolina, so.
Right. So it's
Well,
probably a matter of getting
Amazon-
bodies down there.
Amazon just did that second headquarters. They were going to have a third headquarters in New York, but then a certain New York congresswoman drove them away from that. But then they've already got the second headquarters in, I was going to say North Carolina, but I can't remember exactly where it's at. So if they've already got that kind of going, how easy would it be for them to say, you know, the political environment in Seattle is not real friendly. Let's start moving a bunch of our people. That could be catastrophic for us. That would be terrible. So
What
you would think that,
What do you
okay,
think is?
you would think that
What do
Seattle,
you think is going? Okay.
go ahead.
what do you think's going to happen if we change governors and Culp is saying that he wants to get rid of a lot of the regulations on the businesses? Do you think that is going to maybe make a difference for getting business to stay in the state?
Yeah, it would make a huge difference. I mean, look at, so one of the things that Trump did, whether, I'm not being political on either side, but one of the things Trump did was he eliminated regulations on businesses. That was like adding gasoline to a fire. When you make it easier for businesses to do business, then it's more favorable. People start trusting more, and therefore they go out and they actually do more business. If it's a very heavy regulated environment, then they pull back and they sit on cash and things like that because they don't know what's the next shoe that's going to drop. So I personally don't know that Culp has enough backing for him to get in there. But if he was able to get in there, I think you would see economically, Washington would pick up dramatically, because right now there's a lot of burdensome regulation on business that if it were freed up, it would improve economic viability. Now, that said, Washington State's been the #1 in the nation for the last couple of years for jobs and economic activity. Western Washington in particular. So we're coming from a position of strength already. But if you unleashed regulations, you would just see exponential growth. So I don't know. It's hard to say what's going to happen with all these elections and all these things that are going on, but it causes a person to pay attention, because if the Seattle City Council, with actions that they're taking, have far enough reach that they can impact the individual residents of the state, you have to pay attention to it. How do you not? So, well, guys, I think we're coming up on the bewitching hour. I think we've had some very substantive conversation here. Hopefully everybody's got something out of this. Sometimes I think the best meeting we can have is just talking with each other and working through some ideas, some thoughts that we are having, as opposed to maybe having a presenter. But there's a lot of great presenters that have given us a lot of good information as well. So we like both formats, honestly. And our next presenter, Gene's gonna fill. I can't wait, actually. I am so interested to know more of your side of the fence than I guarantee you can teach me way more than anything. So. Anyway, Caitlin, do you want to tell us when the next meeting is?
The next meeting is, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. The next meeting is November 10th at the same time, 6 p.m. We will have Jean talk to us about her tax coaching. I guess that's a weird way to say that, but she'll be talking with us next time. I mean, you can find us on Facebook at South Sound Real Estate Networking. You can find Kevin at Geneva, Kevin Romine's Geneva Financial, I believe. And
yeah, if you Google me, it'll pop up with.
We have a cool new business page, so on Google.
Yeah, somebody I know whipped me up a Google page.
And don't forget that the recording goes on his YouTube page as well.
Yep, I was just about to say that. You can find us at Kevin Romine on, it's the first one you find if you look Kevin Romines on YouTube. And that will be up by Friday. So, and this was really good for a lot of like beginner questions and trying to figure out what all of these things actually mean. So if you know somebody that could benefit from it, you know, send it their way or send them to us and we can get them directed to the video so they can hear some more stuff. We also have all the other meetings. If you weren't able to make it, you can go and view them there as well.
Is there any way, Caitlin, that we can get rid of that second Kevin Romines on YouTube so there's not a conflict or not any question as to which channel it is?
Yeah, I'll take care of it.
Okay. Sounds good. I accidentally, I don't even know how I did it, but I've got 2 YouTube channels, but we'll get rid of one and get down to just the one and only that I need. So,
And I did get the directory out while we were in our meeting. Some of you saw it. Some of you saw it, and I'll get the corrections in there soon as possible. But that is a great source to connect with other people and ask more questions about maybe what they do in specific areas.
yes, I would encourage anybody attending the meeting, if you have any interest or have any questions that someone within the meeting could answer for you, feel free to reach out to them. Virtually everybody would be happy to help anybody else. So I know that over the years, Naomi has been instrumental in helping me to learn and navigate the meetings. I got my start with Naomi's meeting in Olympia. Kim has been instrumental in working with me and talking back and forth and working out details on some of her projects. Rick and I have built a great relationship, and I've got many, many others that honestly, if it wasn't for the group of people, I wouldn't have a lot of the knowledge that I have today. So I am very, very thankful because it comes collectively. I certainly don't have all the details myself. So, but thank you very much. We appreciate you attending. And anything else, Caitlin?
Nope, that's all. We'll see you on November 10th.
Thank you, guys.
Adios. Bye.